The character that this statue is modeled after is unquestionably no stranger to Star Wars fans, and he certainly does not need any introductions. But I'm going to go ahead and give him an introduction anyways. Hello, I'm Gina, and this is my full review of the Mythos Boba Fett polystone statue. Now, this particular piece is from the celebrated Star Wars Mythos line from Sideshow Collectibles. And to the disappointment of many fans, this line has now been discontinued. Now, the Mythos Boba Fett statue was released in 2013, and since then, many collectors have weighed in their thoughts on this statue. So, the purpose of this video is to explain why I personally admire this statue and why I hold it in such high regards. So to begin, as always, I'm going to provide you with some background information. I'm then going to provide you with a close-up detailed look at his portrait, his body outfit, his many weapons, the base, and then I'm going to conclude with my final thoughts. And that's where I'll count down my top 3 favorite features of this statue. So I don't have a Boba Fett t-shirt. So with my generic Star Wars t-shirt on and the cameras rolling, let's get started. So the Sideshow Star Wars Mythos line that this statue belongs to has 3 defining attributes. Number 1, the statues in this line all have a relatively high edition size. The statue here has an ES of 2500. Number 2, the statues in this line are all 5th scale in size. And then number 3, finally, the Star Wars Mythos line captures Star Wars characters in a moment in time that was not explored in the films. This piece here, we have Boba Fett perched over a precipice or a cliff, presumably on the planet Tatooine, or perhaps on a planet with a very similar desert-like composition. Now, the principal sculptors who worked on this piece are Michael Norman and Pascal Waywo, and both artists have an extensive history with Sideshow Collectibles. For me personally, the Mythos Boba Fett is my favorite statue from these 2 sculptors. Now, even though this statue expands on the character of Boba Fett, what I really love about this piece is that, in my opinion, the spirit of Boba Fett has not been abandoned. I think that the bounty hunter that fans love is still here and can still be seen throughout this entire design. And to fully appreciate the connection between the statue and the character, I think that we need to take a step back and look at the origins of Boba Fett. Boba Fett is a bounty hunter by trade, a Mandalorian bounty hunter to be more precise. The Mandalorians are an ancient warrior clan with a fierce reputation for developing tactical gear and weapons into their outfits. And of course, Boba Fett is notorious for sporting the classic Mandalorian armor. Now, the character was actually first teased on television in the Star Wars Holiday Special, but let's not get into that dreadful TV special. So, Boba Fett's official first appearance was in The Empire Strikes Back, and in that film, Boba Fett tracked the Millennium Falcon to Cloud City for Darth Vader, and he also delivered Han Solo to Jabba the Hutt, and that speaks volumes to his resourcefulness. Later releases of Star Wars films would establish Boba Fett as the clone of Jango Fett, but I prefer the mysterious aura of the character. And in fact, the actor who first portrayed Boba Fett has explained that he based his performance on a Western gunslinger with no backstory. In my opinion, that shady, shadowy spirit of Boba Fett can be seen in this statue. I have such reverence for the design of the Mythos Boba Fett statue because for me, it highlights the weather-beaten, independent nature of the galaxy's most clever bounty hunter. And by reviewing his history, I think you can better understand all of the little Easter eggs hanging from his outfit and the weapons that he's carrying. Now, all of which I'll touch upon later in the video, but first, let's discuss the portrait. other Boba Fett statues by Sideshow Collectibles. The Mythos Boba Fett, the helmeted portrait, cannot be angled. However, his viewfinder can be positioned upwards or downwards depending on your preference. And for me personally, I'm fond of having his viewfinder pushed upwards. It gives an unobstructed view of the helmet. Now, front and center of his helmet is his T-shaped visor. And I love how it's painted with a slight glossy finish. It gives the illusion of a glass visor. Perhaps one of the most observable traits of this helmet is that not one square inch of space is left unscathed or unmarked. It really reverberates well with this tough interpretation of Boba Fett. Indentations, abrasions, scuffs, they can all be seen from every viewpoint. And the general paint scheme appears as if the green paint has chipped off or peeled off the helmet. For me, all of these markings make me feel as if the helmet has been through daunting battles and altercations. Now, one of my favorite qualities of Boba Fett's helmet is that I think it does a great job of preserving the mysteriousness, the secrecy of the man behind the outfit. And looking at the helmet on this statue, I think that mysteriousness is carried over nicely. In my opinion, the war-torn exterior of this helmet really sets the scene for this entire statue. Okay, so now I'm going to shift my focus downwards, and let's take a closer look at the weather-beaten body outfit of the statue. Earlier in this video, I summarized the 3 attributes of the Star Wars Mythos series. But one attribute that I neglected to mention is that all the statues in this line are fully sculpted. There's no mixed media. And when I look at the body outfit of the Mythos Boba Fett, it's all the sculpted folds and creases and pleats that I find striking. And the torn and tattered ends, they all give this statue an intrinsic drifter feeling. Now, I plan to give you a closer look at the sculpted folds and creases of the body outfit. But first, I want to draw your attention to all the multi-layered components that make up his outfit. At the center of the body is, of course, the Mandalorian breastplate. And similar to his helmet, the olive green paint is made to appear as if it's peeled or flaked off. And the execution is spot on, in my opinion. Moving downwards, the maroon-colored wrist gauntlets are on full display. On his left arm, we have Boba Fett's mini concussion rocket and flame projector. And I love the thorough sculpt of these gadgets. Now, focusing on his right arm, there's supposed to be a grappling hook attached to this gauntlet, which unfortunately is not easy to detect here. But what is obvious and pretty cool is the fuel line. It's sculpted so well that it actually appears as mixed media. Now, this fuel line is supposed to travel to Boba Fett's infamous jetpack loaded on his back. Now, the surface of this jetpack is tarnished and corroded. Now, one of my favorite elements are the directional thrusters located at both ends of the jetpack. Now, let's return to the front facade of the body. Draped across his shoulder is a cape or cloak. And on this statue, it appears larger in size than what we've seen in the Star Wars films. Now, to add to this unique interpretation of Boba Fett, I love the kilt that he's sporting and how it's designed to flow across his leg. The lightsaber hilts shown on this statue are not directly referenced from the film. This is another unique element to this piece, and in my opinion, they're sculpted even better than the lightsaber hilts on some premium format statues. These Easter eggs sort of point to Boba Fett battling with the Jedi or Sith, and they may suggest that he was victorious in those battles. Now, for most of this section, I've been focusing on the sculpt of the body outfit, but I'm just as fond of the paint application. As you can see here, the outfit is comprised of earth tone and natural colors, all of which mimic the appearance of soil and clay. And for me, these colors make sense because, it fits with the image of Boba Fett tracking his target through the rugged terrain. These are the colors that one would expect from a resourceful bounty hunter. And speaking of bounty hunters, all bounty hunters need a weapon, and this guy comes with plenty. So let's discuss that next. The Mythos Boba Fett statue is displayed with 3 prominent weapons, and each of them have a strong connection to the Old West frontier themes that I love about Star Wars. Now, the most obvious and notorious weapon here is this brazen long-range rifle that he's holding in his left hand and resting upon his hip. Now, before I get to this big gun, let me zoom in on his secondary weapons. Carried in the right hand and resting downwards is, of course, the Blastech EE3 blaster rifle. Now, the sniper scope and elongated shaft are really well done, and it looks fairly accurate to the version that was used in the film. But the rifle hoisted on his shoulder is even cooler in my opinion. Now, Sideshow could have taken the easy road and obscured this weapon with Boba Fett's arm. They could have kept the design very modest, but instead, this rifle is given a beautiful sculpt, and it is undoubtedly the most detailed of all the weapons on the Mythos Boba Fett statue. Okay, so time to focus on the long-range rifle. And for me, this is the star of the statue. The disproportional size compared to Boba Fett is what really directs your eyes to this weapon. Now, you can't help but notice the long shoulder strap or harness dangling from this rifle, and its sculpt is really convincing. It has a mixed media look. Now lastly, shifting down to the waistline, there's actually a 4th not so prominent weapon on this statue that is concealed in a holster and almost out of sight. The final point I would like to bring up about the weapons is that the statue comes with a small blaster that can be swapped out in place of the long-range rifle in his left hand. And I've actually stored away that pint-sized blaster in the box, never to be displayed. And that's because it's so underwhelming. In my opinion, it actually weakens the formidable pose and attitude of Boba Fett. And this is just one of my minor slights against the statue. Now, even though that blaster is small, what's not small? The base. And I'm excited to talk about that next. So the base of this statue is composed in 2 segments. On top we have a rock face, cliff, or bluff, and then it's seated upon a very classic, distinguished podium. Now first I want to draw your eyes to the rock base on top. Now some collectors may feel that Sideshow resorts to rock bases a bit too often for their statues, and I can agree with those sentiments to some extent. But these rock bases from Sideshow are usually executed really well. They look convincing and really realistic. And with this statue, I think that's certainly the case. Taking a closer look at the exterior, you can see that the surface has a granulated texture. And then viewing the base from the side, they are the stratified rock layers ascending upwards. But what I find most impressive is how the edge of the cliff extends beyond the podium. This gives the statue a forced perspective and amplifies the pose of Boba Fett. Okay, so now let me discuss the podium next. Now, of course, all of the statues in the Star Wars Mythos line share the same pedestal design. But what distinguishes the podium on the Mythos Boba Fett statue are the imitation scruff marks overlaying the podium. And there's no doubt that they were added so that the podium would harmonize with the coarse terrain of the cliff. I like the principle of this design, but seeing it in person, I think that the podium really should have had a clean, polished finish, similar to the podium on the Darth Vader Mythos statue. There's a strong enough partition between the cliff and the podium that I don't think there's a need to try to blend the two. I would much prefer if the podium had a unscathed, refined look. But nevertheless, this is still my favorite base of all the Mythos statues. So viewing this statue as a whole, what really stands out to me is the ingenuity and resourcefulness of Boba Fett. I hold the statue in such high regards because here we have Boba Fett's attitude on full display. And there's so many elements I love about the statue, but if I had to choose 3 favorite features, I would begin with one particular Easter egg that's hanging from his body outfit. My number 3 favorite feature of the Mythos Boba Fett statue are the lightsaber hilts. They stir up your imagination on what this bounty hunter has been up to. Okay, so my second favorite feature of this statue is the overhanging cliff base. This design accentuates the illusion that Boba Fett is perched over the edge. And finally, my number 1 favorite feature of this statue is of course the Mammoth long-range rifle. And it fulfills the reputation of Boba Fett being the most lethal of all bounty hunters. From my perspective, this weapon highlights Boba Fett as the professional tracker, the solitary huntsman from a time long ago in a galaxy far, far away. Now, of course, these are just my opinions on the Mythos Boba Fett statue, and I urge you to share your thoughts on this statue in the comment section below. And don't forget to check out other YouTube videos on this guy. So, on that note, I want to thank you for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Take care.